His 4 o'clock hour. Max Olson, theathletic.com, writes college football and obviously in the meat of what's going on with the game itself. Joins us every Thursday around 4 o'clock on Sikkim 365 Radio and also 365 Sports. Max, what are you writing? What did you write about this week that created a stir?
Created a stir? I mean, I didn't fire Matt Wills. What are you talking about?
So you think that you've heard Jeff Traylor. There's names we've heard out there. I mean, do you have any clue what's going on with Tech?
I think that early on in the process that clearly is going to take 5 weeks if not more. I think that the starting point here on the search with Texas Tech is kind of clear. I'm curious to see if there will be some maybe surprise candidates that emerge here, because there is a lot of time for twists and turns. But certainly there's some significant interest and contact with Sonny Dykes and Jeff Traylor, and there are also some very important people at Texas Tech that want Art Briles to be considered, and so we will see if that goes somewhere, or if the significant backlash that would come with that prevents it from ever getting serious.
What if Kirby Hocutt came into him and said, "I cannot do Art Briles, but I will"? How about a Jeff Lebby? Certainly hiring Kendall Briles or Jeff Lebby still comes with some baggage there, and it's a good question, because I do think Jeff Lebby and what they've done at Ole Miss, and I think he will be a guy that's going to have some options this offseason, and I'm curious to see kind of what those look like. I think that I think when you look at the landscape here and you say Art Briles is 65 years old, you could bring in that type of offense, but go younger with one of those guys. I think they're all kind of tied together here, though. I mean, I think that it's really a question of can you get enough people on board with this, and even can you get the fan base on board with it? And I think that's what Kirby Hocutt kind of addressed on Monday, is that they need a head coach hire here that really unifies the fan base and is not divisive.
Max, with the games this week in the Big 12, I mean, it's kind of separated itself into tiers now. You got Baylor and Texas coming up in Waco. I think it's a game that's kind of make or break for UT in terms of, hovering right there around 500. And Baylor's obviously in the thick of the Big 12 race right now. Your thoughts on Longhorns and Bears coming up in Waco on Saturday?
Yeah, certainly we're getting down to it now in terms of games that, just like with Iowa State, Oklahoma State last week, games that have real implications here for this Big 12 title race. And I think that's, it's a huge one for both teams. And, Texas is still kind of hard to put your finger on a little bit, because you see the upside there in the way that, especially like the first half against Oklahoma, you've seen at their best, man, they can potentially beat anybody in the Big 12 when it's clicking. But, can they be 4 quarters consistent? I mean, that's certainly, not been the case with their last few, and now they've had an idle week to work through that. So I'm curious to see how they show up against the Baylor team that I think has been, to their credit, really, really steady, really pretty reliable from week to week in terms of, what they're capable of doing, and I expect this to be a really great coaching chess match.
We mentioned this yesterday. There 5 coaches have already been fired, and not even the November. Do you feel like, and we've kind of discussed this on this show, that the national signing period now in December is going to make that something more normal, or is this the exception?
Oh, it's a good question. I mean, I don't know. I think we probably tend to fret a little bit too much about that recruiting class that's impacted during a coaching change, because, it feels like one of those things where you need to go make a hire and get your momentum back and all that kind of stuff. But those transition classes are usually pretty tough. Usually are going to have a lot of attrition. And so I don't know that you make a firing because of recruiting. And even LSU right now, I'm sure, and USC, everyone's trying to pick apart their commitment lists and stuff like that. So, that doesn't mean that they're going to rush and make a hire. It is interesting people are doing this a little bit earlier. I think in the Texas Tech example too, the thing that bothers you a little bit is, man, and we've seen this before. You remember Tom Herman's last year at Houston, it sucks for these kids at SMU and UTSA that are having awesome seasons, and you hope it isn't that kind of distraction for the whole month of November here that causes them to lose a game because they're having really special seasons, and it's not fair to the coaches and players and anybody there that all this speculation is going to happen now for the next 5-6 weeks.
What do you make of James Franklin changing agents?
I mean, I think James Franklin's probably changing jobs too. I mean, I don't like he can, and look, he's in a tough spot. There's nothing you can really say that sort of pleases your fan base right now because there are a lot of moving parts to this stuff, and he's a guy that, maybe he could get either USC or LSU. I mean, depending on how this stuff plays out. But I think Franklin to USC has seemed kind of obvious here. From the moment that Helton was fired, and we'll see if others want to go make a run there. But yeah, I would be shocked if Penn State doesn't open up this offseason, and that's a hell of a job too.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing about the carousel, right? Is one job falls, another one opens up, and it just keeps on. It's like conference realignment in a way. But sticking with the Big Ten, Max, big battle between Michigan and Michigan State coming up this weekend. Something's got to give. 2 top 10 teams coming up on Fox. Your thoughts on Wolverines and Spartans?
Yeah, two teams that have been impressive up to this point in terms of the way they've managed to win some close games there and stay undefeated. And certainly when it's clicking right, those are two teams that can really run the ball and that are playing pretty decent defense this year. And the quarterbacks are two guys that are kind of still pretty relatively young and unproven. So I'm interested to see how they show up in this one. I think Michigan, you would think just from like a recruiting standpoint, is the more talented team and probably has a little bit of an edge in this one. But man, really, I really would not have expected Mel Tucker would have Michigan State at this point in year 2. So maybe that just speaks to what a great coach and staff they've got there. I don't know who's going to win it, but certainly this is a defining weekend for probably the best division in college football between that and Ohio State, Penn State. So pretty excited to see how that goes, plays out.
I'm curious, do you watch the weekly college football playoff show on whenever they do it?
You mean like the one starting next week?
Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
You do? What do you is that? Well, you have to. You got to write stories about it. I've stopped watching it. We've all three very rarely do we watch much of it at all. But what do you think we're going to see in this first week?
Certainly we're heading towards that time when it's time to set all the narratives and arguments and debates and all that kind of stuff. The thing that and I don't know if we talked about this last week or not, but the thing that they always say about these committees and about the playoff process is that every week they tear up the rankings and start over and redo it all, right? And that week to week consistency isn't really a thing in this, and certainly we've seen some poor examples of that over the years, right? But I would think if that's really how this thing works, there's no harm in putting Cincinnati at number 2. It doesn't mean they have to keep them at number 2 the rest of the way, but I would hope that I think the big thing we all want to see is just where do they put Cincinnati and what kind of respect do they put on them for being undefeated, for being, on their way to a conference championship and having a couple Power 5 wins, playing, about as tough of a schedule as they could have this year and playing well, not dominant at times, but playing really well. I think where Cincinnati ends up here is the thing I'm most fascinated to see.
All right.
Max, what were your thoughts on the overtime, Illinois and Penn State, the new format? How did that go over with you?
I thought it was fun to watch just as a viewer. The drama of it was awesome. I can certainly sympathize that as a Penn State fan, that would be a pretty horrifying way to have your season get ruined. I mean, that is, but you also got lots and lots and lots of chances there to go score. And I don't know if the new model's that bad. I mean, you got to remember this is only going to happen in like 1% of games that he would even, go to multiple overtimes. But, man, I think coaches probably got to figure out a better way to find a way to score some points in those situations because it's so tough when you're at the 3-yard line there and you got 22 bodies crammed into that small of a space. Like, but the play calling it was not very good in that one, and I'm sure it has led to a lot of coaches this week trying to figure out, geez, if we have to play 9 overtimes, what the heck do we call?
Yeah, no doubt about that. And Max, final thing for you. We were talking earlier because the playoff show is coming up, and we're starting to get in that routine. But who are your top 4 teams as we sit here right now?
Oh, come on, you can't put me on the spot like that. I mean, like we did. I think a week ago we did revise. What we thought our mid-season, like we at the mid-season point here, kind of revised what we thought the Final Four would be at the end. And, for me, I kind of ended up talking myself into this idea that Georgia's going to win out, but then lose to Alabama in the SEC title game. I kind of think it's possible that both of them get in there. And I think if that's the case, and I don't know if this is what I think will happen or what I'm rooting for, to happen, but I think the other 2 teams in that 4 would be Ohio State and Cincinnati, I think, at this point. I'm just not, we'll see on Oklahoma, but it's just hard to sit here and feel very, very good that Oklahoma's going to win out. And, maybe this is one of those years where, we're due for an upset in the Big 12 title game. It hasn't happened yet. We've come close a couple times here, but it hasn't happened yet since this title game came back. And so maybe you have a OU losing in that game, and that knocks them out of the field. But right now, it's hard for me to sit here and say Oklahoma, yeah, they're still undefeated, and you don't want to say it doesn't feel like it. But, man, I just don't – the confidence level in them as a playoff team, I'm not quite there yet.
Yeah, it's they have a little something to do. They keep winning, but I think that one of those things that can be used against them. But they run the table. They run the table, no matter, especially because they have.
And then, of course, the Oregon part of this that'll be really interesting to see too next week. And just clearly, I mean, I don't know that I trust Oregon that much to finish 12-1 based on how they played in the Pac-12, but certainly the whole Oregon-Ohio State debate is going to start next week and probably get pretty annoying here.
All right, Max, who's the next coach fired then? Since we're already get to 5.
I mean, that's the weird thing about Wells is like, I would have said, yeah, he's going to be the first coach fired in the Big 12 here. But I would have thought it would be at the end of November, even if it was inevitable. And Kirby Hocutt said it was inevitable. Like the timing of this week didn't make a lot of sense to me. Like you're playing OU this week and then you have a bye. Like, go get blown out by OU and then do it. So, like, just doing it this week I thought was weird. And that, same with Orgeron where, yeah, it seemed inevitable after they lost to Kentucky, but I didn't actually think it'd be during the season. So, I don't know, guys. We were caught off guard on Monday, and, we're probably going to be caught off guard here again in the next few weeks.
Thanks for the time. As always, Max Olson, college football writer, national writer for theathletic.com. He wrote a story about Tech in their search. I could not believe this. They have been ranked in the top 25 since 2010. Remember, 2 years prior to that was that triangle of Oklahoma, Texas, and Texas Tech. 16 weeks in the top 25 in the last 11 and a half years.
Oh, that sounds high. I mean, it kind of does, actually. Yeah. I mean, I know that sounds daunting when you say that, but to me, my reaction isn't like, oh, that's it. I go, yeah, that sounds about right, if not a little high.
And I would almost venture to guess that like 6 of them might have been right in a row.
Probably.
So it's not been 60. Like you might have a big chunk of that right in a row, and then all the rest of it is like they jumped to number 25.
It wasn't when Patrick Mahomes was there.
Yeah,
no, it wasn't. And I'm very curious to see. Like he said, the whole Matt Wells thing, the timing of that. He probably could have waited, but to me, it's like Hocutt said. It was just you saw it coming. It was just like why wait? And maybe the timing could have been a little better. There's a report floating out there right now. I don't know how much validity there really is to it or not because it's Twitter and half the stuff you read on there is BS. But there is somebody who's saying that Jeff Traylor met with Texas Tech earlier today, had a morning meeting with them. I don't know. I'm telling you right now, I don't know how valid that is, but that's just a rumor that's swirling around. So do not say that I reported that because I don't know if it's true, but it wouldn't surprise me if it was. So, yeah, their coaching search is going to be very interesting. It seems like we kind of know who that group of guys that they're really focusing on is, or at least one guy in particular is, and, we'll see what happens. But, yeah, they've been mediocre for a while. They jump up and get, a nice win here and there. But this is a question I keep asking when Matt Wells was there is, like, what was our identity? Like, what, like,
Yeah.
No one has an answer for that because there wasn't one. It was just they were just a team. There was not a prolific air raid offense. There was not a smash mouth, nasty, shut you down defense. It was just a average offense and an average defense and an average special, just average across the board, if not below average at times. So, I'm definitely in the camp that they needed to make a change. Now, the debate about the timing and all of that, that's, separate. But I definitely feel like they needed a breath of fresh air.
And, I know Max said it doesn't have anything to do with recruiting. I don't think it has anything to do with getting new players. I think it just has to do with not sending, right now you can just save money and all that on your code. I'm not going to send this guy out to go recruit for Texas Tech, because we know he's not going to be here.
Yeah, I'm trying to find since 2010, their best year was 8-5. Back-to-back years when Tuberville eventually had one game where he left early, and then Cliff Kingsbury's first year. Hey, by the way,
that.
Don,
what does that say there? 5th, 6th, 8th.
Yeah, no,
fifth,
they haven't.
Sixth,
They have not
seventh,
touched
8, 9.
They haven't touched anything in a long time. 2008 was that 11-2 team which beat Texas Harrell to Crabtree. Don Harris, who does a great job, been in San Antonio a long, long time. He's saying that he expects Tech to probably come calling somewhere that might take $2.5 to $3 million to keep him at UT San Antonio. Now, they are moving into a new conference sometime soon, but they're also a very young school when it comes to football. I think Jeff Traylor wants to stay at UT San Antonio, but Texas Tech will probably throw the house, the boat, everything else at him, and we'll see what happens. And not sure what UT San Antonio can do, but he made it clear that at least they have been in discussions throughout the year that this might, at least if in fact it happens, what can UT San Antonio or UTSA do?
And I think this is a very pivotal moment for UTSA football. I mean, not because of just the fact that they could lose this coach who's brought them to an unbeaten season, heading into the month of November. I think it's how much do you really want to play this game? How much do you really want to pony up and support football? How serious are you about keeping your head coach around? And I know they have limitations. They can't go out and spend like a lot of Big 12 teams can. Like in the race for who can money whip Jeff Traylor the most, UTSA is not going to win that battle. Oil alums at Tech are going to, keep pushing that number up and up and up. They're just not going to be able to match that. But can they get it to at least a respectable enough level to where – there is enough there to hold on to that you go, you know what? Yeah, this is satisfactory enough that I am going to turn down Tech and maybe wait for something down the line. So for UTSA, I'm sure they're scrambling right now trying to figure out what they can put together. But, I'm sure they'll be fine and can hire another new good coach. But if they have the opportunity, they have even the slightest opportunity to keep Traylor, I think they have to do it. They have to find a way to do it.
Yeah, otherwise because right now they put him on the map, and he's been the head coach just for 2 years, but it's worked. Also, who was the guy that was there when they were successful? Mike Leach. He's at Mississippi State.
Yeah.
Talking about candy corn.
Yeah, and and they've had a couple. They beat Texas A&M. What was it, 3 or 4 weeks ago? Do you think now that a lot of that's cleared, that he could go back to Lubbock?
No.
I think
if the fans were voting, he could. But administration-wise, even though it's changed over from that time period, it's not all the same parties.
Don't they still owe him some money? Or
yeah,
he
they
thinks
do.
they do?
They still owe him money, and they refuse to pay it. And, I'm not getting into that argument because I don't know enough of the minutia of it. But, yeah, they do owe him money. But apparently they're just not going to have to pay it because they haven't, and they're not looking like they're going to. So you might believe in the CJK5H curse is what they've gone through ever since they fired Leach and didn't pay him his money. And there's a lot of Tech fans that believe they have been cursed. And if they just paid him his money that he's owed, that it would clear everything. And I would almost do it just out of superstition. I'd be like, what the hell? Just pay him his money and maybe you start winning games again. But no, they haven't been good solidly, consistently since Leach. And I think a lot of the fans feel like he got wronged. But, I think there's not a return in sight.
If you go to Google and you Google the name Mike Leach and Kent Hance, who's very much influenced at Texas Tech. I'm not done fighting. He said, we had a dubious and dishonest chancellor, Kent Hance. Tech chancellor responds to allegations against Mike Leach. Leach still dropping haymakers on his former Texas Tech administration. And then Ken Hance gets his feelings hurt because I won't sign a lowball contract that he offers. So there's a lot of bad blood. But just you never, in this day and age, you never know. But that would,
Yeah.
He's the one that won there.
Just for some backstory for people who may not know, when Mike Leach and Texas Tech got crossed, Texas Tech offered him a contract in which said that any book he writes, they get 75% of the money. Any appearances he does, any endorsements, they get all the money. And he was like, that's what started to sour the thing. Before the Craig James kid thing even happened, they were already on the tracks of mad at each other.
Yeah, and Ken Hance has been there for years and years as far as like in that role. So like I said, there's a lot of changing over that has occurred, but I'm sure still a lot of people that are there that were probably involved to some extent. I don't know. I mean, I just don't ever see him going back to Lubbock. I just don't see that as a possibility whatsoever. And I don't know if you're at Texas Tech why you would even. It's kind of like the Art Briles thing to me. It's like, why go down that road when you have this opportunity? And I know why, because he can win you football games. So if that's all it's about, and I know that's all it's about, for most programs, even though they say otherwise, then, if it's just winning games, then okay. But if you're really trying to, like, restart something and build something and do all that, I just don't know why you rehash older names like a Briles or a Mike Leach. And again, I don't think he would go there return anyways, but just – yeah, this is these opportunities do not come around often, and if they are coming around often, then you're just a horrific football program. So this is safe to say.
And the stats that Max mentioned, they've kind of been in the gutter.
Tuberville screwed them, and then obviously Matt Wells wasn't a great hire. So this is an all-important one, and I'm very curious, but I think some new blood would do Tech a lot of good, somebody who can build them an identity.
There's a lot of discussion, and of course it's the chat room, and we love every one of you, and then even some of the texts as well. Who has a better chance of being hired at Texas Tech? This is tongue-in-cheek and having fun. Mike Leach, Art Briles, or John Gruden?
That third one threw me. Best chance?
This is just kind of some of the,
I would say John Gruden had the best chance of getting hired. I think that Briles would probably be number two because we know there will at least be some pushback for that. And Mike Leach, again, I'd never see that happening. So, I guess it would have to be John Gruden by default.
You'd have to call.
That doesn't mean that's just. Don't say we reported that.
You'd have a better. You'd have to have somebody call Mike Leach from a non-Lubbock number, so that when it popped on his phone, it didn't say Lubbock, Texas. Because I promise you, anytime Lubbock, Texas pops up on his caller ID, he goes, "Nope."
Yeah. By the way, on Memphis, the